Newscast for today, Sunday, June 25th, 2023. With the news at this time, my name is Joshua Van Sleckman. Thank you for joining us, and we get to the news in details. Former Minister of Natural Resources Raphael Trotman, who signed the 2016 production sharing agreement with ExxonMobil and its partners, in a new book has not only cited his support for a renegotiation of the lopsided oil deal, but has also urged that the agreement can be renegotiated. The former minister said in his view that no contract is unchangeable and he would support changes to the deal which seeks more for the country. Trotman is known across Guyana and wider afield as a citizen who signed away Guyana's vast riches by binding the country to the abusive provision of the PSA, with ExxonMobil, Hess Corporation and CNOOC. The contract was signed by the minister with responsibility for natural resources on October 27, 2016. In other news, billions of U.S. currencies being deducted annually from Guyana's oil resources to pay back the ExxonMobil-led consortium for its investments in the Stabroek Block. Yet Guyanese are not privy to the expenses being raked up by these companies or the interest rate attached to the financing of the projects. Vice President Bharat Jagdeo was asked on Thursday to expound on the rates being paid to the oil companies when he deferred the question and provided an unrelated response. Early in his press conference, the VP said Guyana was paying a rate to Exxon as this is a standard practice for a return to be generated on the company's equity. In a follow-up question to the former head of state's remarks, queried whether there was a standard rate Guyana is paying. The subject of a standard rate is particularly significant given that Guyana has already been warned by the International Monetary Fund that the country could lose massive revenue by failing to cap the interest rates on the investments for its oil projects. In his response to the specific question, however, the former president said that the government of Guyana is not paying anything because they have to raise the financing using the best efforts. Before further questions could be asked, Jagdeo requested that the press conference, quote-unquote, move on. The response from the country's chief spokesperson on the petroleum sector cast a gloomy picture on what the true cost of capital is and the total revenue Guyana could be losing annually on interest payments. In other news, Guyana's Vice President Dr. Bharat Jagdeo recently announced the postponement of the country's oil blocks auction to finalize the framework for the industry, which will include new laws and model contracts. But despite concerns about the repeated delays, Jagdeo remains confident that Guyana continues to attract interest from investors. He made the case that Guyana has good appeal and a record of discoveries. He said weeks ago that 85 other nations are in the ring, competing with Guyana for investment. The vice president often argues in favor of competitiveness when asked to advocate on Guyana's behalf, such as with calls for a higher royalty. Though ExxonMobil Corporation and its partners were required to surrender 20% of the Stabroek Block in October 2023, there has been able to secure one more year extension from the government. They argue that their exploration plans were affected by unforeseen COVID-19 delays in 2020 and as such should be given back the lost time via an extension. Their claim is not an unreasonable one as it is catered for under the force majeure provisions in the Stabroek Production Sharing Agreement. The deal notes that in this regard, the oil companies can seek relief in their operations if their operations are affected by circumstances that are unforeseen, such as a disaster or a pandemic. Vice President Dr. Bharat Jagdeo also confirmed on Thursday that the companies will get one more year to keep the entire concession since authorities agreed that the company's exploration plan were severely affected by the pandemic. The extension of ExxonMobil's hold on the concession was also raised by Hess Corporation, whose Chief Executive Officer John Hess participated in a separate conference Thursday too. With respect to the portion of the block to be relinquished next year, he said the partners are pretty much ready for this, since it's not in material and not in prospective. And just before we head to a short break, since assuming office in August 2020, the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration has repeatedly pledged to establish a Petroleum Commission to ensure that the competent and independent management of the country's burn on oil sector and reduce political control. However, with no significant progress made towards its establishment as of June 2023, recent developments have called into question whether this promise will ever be fulfilled. The draft Petroleum Activities Bill 2023 was recently published by the government. It proposes granting sweeping powers to the Natural Resource Minister, effectively consolidating authorities over the hydrocarbon industry, and makes no allowance for the creation of an independent petroleum commission. The law is expected to govern the oil sector for years to come. These sweeping powers bestowed upon the minister by the bill are cause for concern. They represent the significant expansion of political authority over Guyana's oil and gas sector. The absence of provision in the bill that would enable the minister to cede these powers to an independent petroleum commission is particularly troubling for some stakeholders.
The much-awaited Digicel School Football Tournament. Get ready to witness the passion, the skill, and the excitement. Join us as we bring together schools from all 10 regions, fostering unity and sportsmanship from June 24th to August 13th. Prepare to experience the adrenaline rush as talented young athletes compete for glory on the field. So mark your calendars and join us as we witness the magic unfold. Keep checking press for the game's fixtures. Digicel, the network for everyone, everywhere.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, this is your main newscast for today, Sunday, June 25th, 2023 on Kaieteur Radio. I'm Joshua Van Slykeman. 2 Kanu officers were arrested for allegedly stealing from a detainee. In a statement on Saturday afternoon, Kanu said the 2 officers have been handed over to police. The Kanu ranks allegedly stole from a foreign national who was detained during an operation in Quarantine Berbice Region 6. The foreign national was taken to the Kanu's headquarters in Georgetown, and it was there that he alleged that the ranks stole gold jewelry and other items from him. And finally, at this time, the body of an unidentified Amerindian man was on Saturday found in a sitting position with a rope around his neck at Kokwani in Region 10. The man hails from Essequibo, but no one knows his name. He was found dead in a building located at the Kokwani airstrip. Investigators believe that the man might have committed suicide. Investigations are ongoing. And as usual, before we wrap things up here on your main newscast, we turn your attention to the page 7 of the Kaieteur News dedicated to being blunt. Today's blunt is titled, When will the government release the audit reports on ExxonMobil's $8.9 billion US expenses? An audit that was done on ExxonMobil's pre-contract costs by UK firm IHS Markit, totaling $1.6 billion US dollars and incurred from 1999 to 2016, is yet to be completed. Is it too much for the Guyana Revenue Authority or even the Vice President Dr. Barrett Jagdeo to provide this country with an update on this matter? Is it too much to ask for transparency and accountability in this regard? And what has become of the audit for Exxon's expenses totaling $7.3 billion US dollars? The government has been noticeably silent on this too. Guyanese, isn't it clear that the PPP happily grants billions of dollars in contract to Exxon and partners, but remain content moving at a snail's pace to ascertain if we have been dubbed or not with inflated bills? The government's management of the oil and gas sector is fraught with good talk. Citizens will, however, remain relentless in their call for the regulation of the industry to be an equal footing. Surely, the government is not waiting for a national scandal or worse yet, an oil spill disaster before it can pull itself together and act in the interests of its people. And with that, We've come to the end of your main newscast on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. My name is Josh Van Slyckman. Thank you for joining us.
Keep calm, but listen on.
Rocking the waves with Kaieteur Radio.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Burbies 99.5 FM.
Kaieteur Radio. Keep calm, but listen on.
Rocking the waves with Kaieteur Radio.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Burbies 99.5 FM.
Kaieteur Radio.
Every time a question is put to Bara Jagdeo on ExxonMobil, he evades them. Don't ask me why. My reporter asked him a simple, straightforward question at his last press conference Thursday. What is the rate of return on Exxon's investments out there, seeing that it is equity and not loans, according to ExxonMobil? Hear how he evaded that simple question.
The thing is that the financing, so a project could be financed from equity or loans. It could be financed from equity or loans. So if you make a loan to the company, the local company, then you have to get a return in the form of a interest payment at a particular rate. If you make an equity injection, you get a return on your equity. So that is it. Regardless of whether you make the financing in a form of a loan or equity, you have to get a return. There's a cost of capital, and that is how it is. Generally, we had this issue when we were developing the hydro with Blackstone, where they wanted to do a 20% rate of return on equity, but we could have borrowed at maybe 8-9%. So it was in our interest that we co-invest in the equity. That's how we were using the funds we have at the IDB, 100 million, 80-something million now, 85 million, to invest in equity so that we can have more loans and they have less equity because equity was remunerated at a higher rate. So that's what you need to explore when you analyze their data. And this is the question you should put to them. I don't want to be answering every time for Exxon too. You have to answer that. Get a clear answer from them. Then you can get a response from me. Seek a clear answer from them.
Is there a standard rate that you're paying?
No, because we are not paying anything. The government of Guyana is not paying anything. So because they have to raise the financing using the best efforts, the cheapest cost of financing. That is what they're supposed to do as a company, right? So this is what can be analyzed even when you look at the revenue back, the cost back. So let's move on. Yes. Anything else? Thank you very much.
This man is running our US $1 trillion oil sector and telling my reporter she should put that question to Exxon to get a clear answer from them first. And then she will get a response from he. How you like that? He doesn't know. Then he went on trying to confuse the reporter with his deceptiveness. We not paying anything. The government of Guyana not paying anything. They have to raise the financing. The cheapest cost of financing they're supposed to do as a company, as companies always do. So if government and Guyana not paying that cheap financing, then who paying, Jagdeo? You or the politicians? Every time Jagdeo opens his mouth, The rope is tightening around his neck as to what he's doing to this country. Y'all have a nice day.
Kaieteur Radio.
Covering Guyana from coast to coast.
Demerara and